told me that none of that's.
I tried 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
This is a Poe show. Yeah, one of those that,
I got the model.
You know, Monroe Street and Old Jacksonville Road. You know where most of those go. Across the street,
All right, now it's
Then
not.
our people would jump over the
Oh, it goes down the west edge,
there is,
This is the model.
John, there was one suggestion in there, one of those magazines, on how to bring the adjustments out for the front. Put an extension on it so you don't have to crawl under there. Like I had to do
sale,
with
charity.
There wants to where all these things come from.
That's all wonky. That's all right.
Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Hey, Norm. See if I can put my fingers on this real quick. There we go. Yeah.
Forgot to shut the doors. All right. Thanks for coming. I know New Year's was just yesterday, so large crowd for being right after that. I know some folks are still out and about for their holiday. First, I want to welcome our guests tonight, and I think we have one guest here.
Yep. This is Bob's grandson. He just started woodworking in 8th grade Chatham, and he's made a couple projects there. So the girls went shopping, so we went down our wood shop making some items.
And over Bob Cox. So who is this? You wanna? He's just here to check things out and woodworking for what? 50 years?
79, yeah.
So we had met before. He worked with my wife at the high school before retiring. Anybody else? We have anybody else? And we have a couple of new members. One new member back here, or renewed after years, right?
Yeah. My name's John Corcoran. I was a member twice before, but my life got busy and got away from it. Started back up.
Welcome. And we have one other member. He's not here, from Decatur, that just joined. His son has gotten into woodworking. He is into blacksmithing, and then his whole family in as well. And then his son got into woodworking, so he's joined our club. He's on this side of Decatur, so he wants to come over here and join us when they have a chance. So we'll see them here soon. Tonight, we have Bob Simel has something he'd like to put out. Frank has we'll get something to work there. We're having a little technical difficulties, and then a few show and tell projects. Bob Fox was supposed to be here tonight. His wife has still got some stuff going on, so he had to be there with her. Keep her in your prayers, please. That's about it for. And then for our annual budget, because of everything going on, we're going to have that next meeting to vote on for what we're going to spend this coming year, or what we're projecting to spend this coming year. So we'll have that at our next meeting, and it'll allow probably more people to be here as well when we do that. I think that's anything else. That should be it. All right. So, Bob.
I want to give you guys an update of where we're at with programming and maybe things we should be looking at on down the road. Kind of like some goals I'd like to give to everybody and things to look at. So, next slide. You know, we had a board meeting last
week. And we sat down, reviewed over options to do, things to consider with programming. I like to get everybody's input tonight. And it makes sense right now. We've had a lot of good feedback, a lot of great presentations over the years. You know, people present monthly, you know, they volunteer to do it. And then those people come in, they do a show and tell. And I've seen just a wide diversity of skill levels and amazing. And I've learned, I think everybody's gained a lot from having that kind of format. It makes sense just to keep that because it's very beneficial to everybody. And I think everybody learns quite a bit by having that, by seeing that. We still like to continue the open shop option. And if anybody wants to do an open shop this year, let me know. We can schedule it, get that set up. Because we're working on getting the workshop going this year, we're gonna be tied up with that. The outside speakers, like we did last year with Mark Adams, who came in on a Friday night and Saturday, we can, maybe in 2024, we'll be able to do that. There are a couple presenters from a school that would love to come here and present. Mark himself wants to come back. He really enjoyed interacting with everybody last March, and he was really impressed that we had over 40 people in the audience, and they really loved all the questions that he's up. So he actually said, Bob, I would love to come back to your club. So that's really nice. But there are a couple speakers that are presenters at Mark Adams School. In fact, they do the finishing classes. They would love to come here on a Saturday and do like a full day session, hands-on demonstration of finishing them. So, but probably not this year right now, it just didn't make sense. But maybe for next year we could tee that, maybe bring in 2 speakers, one in the spring and one in the fall. For those, I haven't done the schedule yet for the rest of the year for the monthly presenters. But once we get everybody's payment in and there's a questionnaire form you can put there if you want to present, then we'll start asking people who wants, you know, what months they want to come in and present then, and what topics do they want to do then with that. And with our group here, the amount of talent in this room, in this organization is amazing. We got a lot of talent, a lot of diversity there. And one of the things we have to plan for and anticipate is that as we get new members, a lot of them are not going to have any skills. They're not going to be comfortable with working with table saws or understanding how to make things square. There's going to be some challenges. And I like to put together a list of individuals in our organization who would be willing to donate some time once we get the workshop up and running, who would be willing to spend like 2 hours on a Saturday once a month or a couple hours on a Monday morning with new people, kind of get them over that hump, make them feel comfortable. Because the biggest thing we don't want to happen is have people join the workshop and they don't learn anything from it. And so we want to make their experience as best as we can with that. Next slide, please. So the short-term goal that I feel I like to have some assistance with is actually finding individuals within our organization who are willing to support, give their knowledge, help out the new members, kind of give them that comfort level they need, and be willing to take questions. We learned last year when we did a lot of conference calls with the other organizations that have the workshop, there are like mentors or people who actually volunteer like half a day in the workshop just to take questions from new members. That way then they kind of help with that comfort level with that. And so we'd like to probably get that kind of teed up now, kind of plant the seed so when we get up and running, then we can get a list of volunteers who are willing to do that. The long-term goal, and this is several years down the road, would be to, and it's on me, is to develop some key relationships with a lot of the master presenters. And the place I use is Mark Adams. Get like the Michael Fortune or Stephen Proctor or Dave Smith or even Mark himself. And we saw some examples from the group in Oregon where they actually bring in a Michael Fortune for 5 days. He does it twice a year with them, and he teaches his classes there. So that would be some things, but that's going to be several years down the road. Right now, probably a weekend, probably like Mark Adams does. He came in on a Friday night, he did an excellent presentation, it was amazing, and then he did a full Saturday on joinery. You know, he also does marquetry too, and that would be great to participate in. So that's kinda like the long-term goals, but this is where we're at right now, I guess. Do you have any questions at all, or any thoughts?
Sounds good.
I think it's a good idea. How come, no presenters this year, what's because of the money, or what is it?
You mean, well, we're still gonna have volunteers from the group present every month.
No, he's not about bringing in.
We're gonna be very busy getting a workshop set up, and probably, I think to your point too, Ben, there's gonna be a lot of money we're gonna have to spend
Yeah.
on wiring, I mean, we have to buy our own glue, sandpaper, we're gonna start from the ground up
Right.
with the workshop. And so probably most of our resources will be going to the workshop. Yes, sir.
Have we got a workshop, site set up and,
We've looked at a couple. I think I'm gonna defer to Dustin. I think we have to wait on a couple things before we can officially sign with them. I'll let you handle that.
Yeah, so we've talked to a couple different places, a couple of different nonprofits that have expressed interest in partnering with us, but we still have to have all our nonprofit stuff done. It needs to get to the IRS and so forth. That's gonna take several months. And in the meantime, we are still exploring stuff. We still want to make sure that when we do make a decision, we don't just stop here. We got a couple places express interest. We have a few months before you do anything. We don't want to just stop looking. We want to make sure when we sit down at the table to try to figure out what's going to be best for our organization that we partner with, have that long-lasting partnership somewhere else. So whether that be one of these two organizations, maybe partnering with the city or state on a piece of property that's sitting vacant, who knows what could happen, what the possibilities are. There was, just talking to friends and neighbors about what's going on. That's how the second opportunity happened. We had one member who was just talking to a neighbor, and the neighbor said, "Hey, I got a place. I got a nonprofit. I got a place, and we could use this possibly." So that came up.
While we're on that topic, I was gonna talk to you later, but I'll just bring it up now. He called me up the other day and said, "Are you guys still interested?" Excuse me. And I said, "Well, from talking to some of the guys here, that until we get our paperwork in, we can't apply for grants, we can't do this, can't do that." And he says, "Well, I've got a program director hired, I've got a grant person hired, He says, we're willing to help out. If you want it, I'm willing to leave it open until September,
Okay.
But he's starting to do other things now.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he asked me if I'd teach a small little, class that he's got going, just on like building walls and stuff, so. Just, so pass that along, if you wanted to, if he wanted to get a hold of him and like, okay, what will you do for us, like go a little deeper, he's willing to talk to you.
What he's talking about is the Destiny.
Dream Center, they call it the Dream Center, it's the old, all the college that closed down,
St. Benedict.
Benedict University, yeah.
Yeah.
They've got the church there, this is the pastor of that Destiny Church, and he's got this church there, he bought the old gymnasium and turned that into this church, and then he bought another big building behind that. It's just loaded with rooms in there.
So it's, like I said, it's getting our paperwork done so that way we can enter into a contract with whoever we're gonna partner with or however that may work. And then just trying to decide on what's gonna work best. There are options out there for that. I originally thought this would be the hard part, and it turns out it's probably gonna be the easiest part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
The next part is whatever space we get is, like I said, our cash is pretty much gonna go to getting the place wired up for tools. Tools aren't a problem. I'm not using my shop, so my tools are gonna go in there until we replace those with our tools owned by the guild. But it's definitely something that's doable. We'll get to that point before the end of the year, I'm pretty confident. First step is this month is getting our articles of incorporation filed. We went ahead and waited until now. That puts our reporting with the state on with our calendar year, because we already go January, December calendar year. And by filing this month, it means that we'll file our are reporting with the state every year after our elections. So it just kind of made sense to do that. And then once the article of corporations or incorporation is filed, then we file for nonprofit with the IRS. And 3 to 4 months, if we're lucky, and we do it right, this is kind of what we're hoping for. Have that come back, and then all of that will be official. So, and we can do some things after articles of corporations are filed. Articles of corporation is filed. But yeah, like I said, the main thing is just we want to continue to look out. So that when we do make a decision, we're making it with multiple options in front of us. So again, if you know somebody or just in conversation somebody says something, please let us know.
So right now, we're kind of in the stage of trying to identify gaps. We're trying to make sure we're gonna kind of help the new people. Frank will be involved with writing the safety policies. We'll need that so we can get them running. So we're doing all those things now to kind of make a little bit smoother transition. So, but that's a good question. Do you have Yeah, I also have at the front a stack of this year's course catalogs for Mark Adams. And they're at the front, and we do have a celebrity amongst us. Curtis is featured in a picture in there for joinery.
How much did you pay?
I gave a sweet
It's
smile.
amazing.
It's a very nice photo, I have to
Yeah.
admit.
You're either photogenic.
That's the first class he's taken there, and they recognized him, and they took his picture. People down there for 20 years, and they don't get that kind of.
You got the page number memorized?
Page 4 or 5, it's not.
It's a centerfold. Oh, boy. Okay,
They've heard more than we have.
yeah, yes. So tonight we're gonna have, Frank, are you teed up?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so Frank's gonna talk about how do you know when your tools are dull, and then how to manage them. Then after that, then, for those of you who brought show and tell, we'll do that next day.
Okay, so hopefully the camera works, because this is going to be a key part of this particular presentation. So, who in here knows that their tools are sharp? Besides Curtis, who in here knows that his tools are sharp?
Only the ones you don't use.
Yeah. Any luck with the camera so far?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see. Those on green. Those on blue. Okay. So let's start. So how many of you have heard, okay, you take it and you put it against your nail, and if it doesn't drag, if it cuts in, that's sharp?
Yes, I've heard that.
You've heard that? How many people have heard, okay, take it, run it across your arm, and if it cuts hairs off, it's sharp?
That one too.
Okay. How many of you have heard that if you take a sheet of paper and you cut along the paper, that's sharp?
Yep.
So in each of those cases, why is that not actually testing for sharp? What's the problem with every one of those cases?
You're using material.
Okay, you're not using wood, you're not using material. You're also not testing the entire width of that particular blade. That's the other problem with doing it in that particular manner. You're testing parts of that blade, but you're not testing the entirety of the blade. If you're trying to do it and you're trying to run it through paper, theoretically, you should try to run from one edge to the other edge. But if you have a dull spot, you're just going to kind of slide down that dull spot and then catch again at another sharp spot.
The other problem could be that you have a poor quality tool and it will never be sharp.
Well, will it never be sharp? You can get it to be sharp. I can get any tool sharp. Whether it stays sharp is the better question. If I move 1 centimeter or, okay, 1/4 of an inch down the board, I can, with a bad tool, with bad tool steel, I can end up just bending and breaking that particular edge away, and it's not there anymore. Yeah, it looks like we're still. You're trying to see over here. Any luck?
Yeah, I gotta figure it out.
You gotta really, I have one of those little block white erasers. I have a carving gouge that's just microscopic in size, just for getting in and cleaning out tiny little spots. That thing is literally buried in an eraser tip, just to protect the tip of it, because I don't want it to run into something else.
And
Else I'd
other
hand it.
sharp tools in your garage and shop, those wine corks, stick them on the sharp.
Yeah, a wine cork would work too, yeah. Anything nice and soft that you can put it into to protect it.
What are your thoughts on hologram?
That's getting into one of those religion topics. I will tell you on my chisels, I have like 4 different ways that I sharpen, depending on what the tool is. And the way that I do my chisels, I use Work Sharp to do that. It is, to me, it's the very fastest way, and that's the most common thing that I need to sharpen. And that does not require a hollow grind at all. My plane blades, if you're talking like my number 5 plane or my number 8 plane, that has a hollow grind on it because I freehand grind. Well, I freehand sharpen. If I didn't freehand sharpen, if I used a jig, I probably wouldn't hollow grind. The whole purpose for that is because I'm freehanding and I can feel when I'm locked into the right angle then. That's, so I do hollow grind, but I also don't hollow grind depending on what type of tool it is. Questions? Comments? Okay. I'll answer that. What's a hollow grind? You've got the edge looking like this. I can then take a wheel like a 6-inch, a 5-inch, even maybe a 3-inch wheel. 3's kind of pushing it, of a grinder, and I can actually grind into that bevel and create a hollow section so that just the very tip and just the very base of it are where my angle is being formed from. That's what a hollow grind is. So all this material's gone so that as I'm running it over the stone, it actually makes it go a lot faster and it's a lot more accurate in my opinion.
Does it make it easier to resharpen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I can go, again, because I can always feel that point. I can feel kind of 2 hinge points, and I go, oh, that's one, that's the other, okay, come back down, okay, there we go, I'm not feeling that. And then I can move forward and backwards. But again, if I was using a jig, I probably wouldn't worry about it. So, because every time I'd be going into the exact same spot in the jig.
So are we gonna address sharpening someday?
Well, we could, yes, I will have to wear if I do it at least, I'm gonna have to probably wear like a armor or something like that because, chisels will be flying at me and other things. No, that's not the way to do it, but.
We can go to show and tell. Anybody have show and tell to show the group?
All woodworkers are always looking for something to make for gifts for family or whoever, and without spending a huge amount of time on each one. So I've been making these live edge picture frames, which are using wood that's basically scrap that gets cut off and thrown away usually. So I get some of my boards cut by Ralph and add live edge left on it. So when they're dry, you can just take a track saw and cut the edges off and use for projects and still have a good board and what's left out with straight edges. So I just brought a few of these to pass around and show. This one had hollow spots in it, so they're filled with epoxy. You can see the epoxy fill on it. The finish isn't completely done. They've got a couple coats of lacquer or shellac on them. I've been trying shellac because it dries quick and makes a pretty nice finish. It's a little bit shiny for me, so the last coat I'll probably do a white Mon Poly or tunnel oil or something like that, but, shellac gives you a good, quick dry time that's easy to sand, and will be a finish on its own, but any other finish will stick to it, so you can use it first and then go to that. Now, these are red cedar, pass those around. Got a couple boards that were given to me. And then I like to do walnut because of the contrast in the wood, the sapwood and the heartwood. So you get something as light as this, or, and I had some that had bark on it and seemed to be holding good. So I did some with the bark at different stages. Like here, I took the bark and cut part of it away. And there's one like this that I left the bark on. So there's just so many different ways you can do it and play around with it.
They're heavy, holy cow.
You know, it seems like a simple project, which it is in some ways, but you end up with more time in them than you think, like most woodworking projects. By the time you get the wood prepared, you have to do all your joinery first, cut your rabbet in the back to receive the glass, and then I put a little round over chamfer on it. And it also lets you know how your table saw or your miter saw is not accurate. So you gotta tweak the miters and get them all to fit. So.
Do you reinforce the corners with anything?
No, I just glue them. I started out making them, using biscuits or dominoes, and it just wasn't going well, and I switched to just gluing them and using spring clamps, and they hold good.
Yeah, so you use spring clamps to hold it in place then?
Yeah.
And then you use a miter saw to cut the miters in?
I do, because I don't have a sled that's set up nice. I mean, you could do it more accurately with a sled on the table saw.
Yeah.
But I use my miter saw, and
How do you make the adjustments then? Because I struggle with mine using the miter saw, and they're always off a little bit. So what are your thoughts on how can you kind of
I'll do them all at a 45 and put them together, and then maybe tweak it to a 44 on one corner or something, just get them to fit better. And I've also found when you get them glued up, if you got a little space, I'll put a little glue in it.
Yeah.
And then just run the orbital over it and let the dust, the dust right from that area will get in the miter joint and fill it in.
Better than wood filler.
Works fairly well, so.
So my question for you is, normally with the frame, of course, you've got the same thickness on all four sides. Since you've got varying thickness, what's your secret then to getting, most of these look like wherever the miter is, that you've got a nice, equidistant, point out there that's worked out. How do you do that? Is there what's your trick?
Well, it is the same thickness because you plane it down.
I'm saying width-wise,
I'll cut them in sequence, so you'll have 3 of your miters that'll basically match as you go around.
Mm-hmm.
And your 4th one will be a mismatch. So sometimes one edge will stick out farther than the other. And since they're live edge, you can just kind of round it off or cut it accordingly, and it doesn't really show up too much. But it would be great if you could match. I know the basic length it's going to take to make like an 8x10 frame is going to take around 55 inches of wood, but that varies by the width of the piece you have because your miters are longer. So I'll try to pick a point to start and stop where you may luck out and they'll come back together and look like you have 4 miters that are matched. But even you'll get lucky once in a while with that. Even when it doesn't, usually being the live edge and They usually still. And they're always a hit for gifts, and they're something that people will actually use, put a picture in. You will give gifts sometimes and, you know, they're like, oh, one of these. These seem to go over.
While the wood is still at length, you cut the rabbit in it?
Yes,
Okay.
do that first.
Yeah.
And then once you start mitering and everything's
Okay.
done, instead of trying to do it afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah, cut it first.
Do you have to finish it after you've glued it to make it all flat?
Yeah. I just plane the wood and don't even finish sand it till after I get it glued up, and then take it, sand it all,
Just
finish sand it, and then that cleans it.
just a orbital sander?
Uh-huh, yeah.
How often do you use your board stretcher?
Well, sometimes I need one. That's called it's just a picture frame, so you start over, but, they're fun to play around with. You can, if you're milling wood like I do, I have Ralph cut, and you get a nice log, just cut some of them, leave the live edges on them, and then you got something to go back and use. But, these are the first ones I did with the bark on them, and I think it's gonna stay, and it's not everybody's taste, but it gives something else.
Ben, do you have a market for these? Are you gonna give them to relatives and stuff like that?
Relatives and friends and.
If you were to sell some of these, what would you charge?
Well, I kind of thought this up doing it, and then I thought, well, I'm not the only one, so I looked on Etsy, and of course, there's a lot of them on Etsy, and they're all like $50 would be the cheapest one you can find for one like that. $50 a note. So, but you can tie up an hour to 2 hours probably in each one, so it's worth that. By the time you do all the steps and get it all done. All right, that's all I've got.
So Ralph, you can start. You could start charging for your scrap, and everybody gets into doing this.
Anybody else have a, Curtis does.
Okay, Nancy.
I had 6 projects to do. And in November and December, which were going to be my Christmas projects. And this is the last one that I have. I did 2 snowmen and 2 Christmas trees. And this is the only odd one because I put on the other ones, if you remember you who were at the Christmas party, the snowman had a gap between each piece of wood of a half an inch, and so did the other Christmas tree. This one, because I shrunk it down, and this one's not quite as tall as what the other 3 were. I really appreciated the fact I would have never in my wildest fantasy imagination, I would have never ever thought that someone would have come up to me and said, Curtis, I like your project there, I'll buy 5 of them for $100 a piece. That absolutely blew my cotton picking mind. I have not called him yet. He gave me his business card. And I haven't called him yet. I needed to get through the holidays. But I will give him a call so we can say, if you're still interested, I will be more than happy to make you 5 more snowmen. I'm also working on this crazy idea of doing a gingerbread man and another Christmas tree or 2. And these are going to probably wind up being summer projects. I've got a couple of things that I have to do for my stepson. He's head football coach out at Pleasant Plains. And he's asked me the last couple of years to do a woodworking project to put in a silent auction for fundraising. Right now, this one is scheduled to go in there as a second one too. So the other white Christmas tree, I painted one white Christmas tree and gave it to a lady friend of my wife. She's been helping my wife deal with her first mother-in-law, and I thought it was really kind of nice to give her a thank you note. For those of you who were around everybody seemed to think the snowman was really pretty cool. Well, he had a brother, and they were almost identical. They're just a little bit of difference. And my wife said, "Say, this snowman looks cool. Would you make me one for my women's group?" I said, "Yes, sure." So we took it over to Illini Country Club. It was the Wednesday before our Christmas party. And I'm carrying it in, and here's maybe a half a dozen ladies standing there saying, "Wow, that's really cool. I hope I get a chance to win that." And I was not there at the time of the silent auction, but my wife said, boy, there were some really upset ladies that they did not get that snowman. And I think there was a couple of oohs and ahs when Kathy grabbed that.
Heather's very pleased. She's very happy with it. It's still outside right now.
Good, because these are outside the things. But anyway, I wanted to bring this in and show it to you. So I did 4 of these stand-up guys, and I did 2 picture frames. Ben, where'd you go? I hope mine is as good as yours. If you look real close, you can see where I had to repair the miter, okay? But we're all woodworkers here, and I'll tell you guys this.
The only one that notices is the guy that makes them.
That's right. I used a different technique on this one. I dry brushed that chalk paint that is so popular now in hobbyists. If you notice, I'll pass it around. This was just some white wood that I got from that place that went out of business. It's I just cut it down to size and run it through the planer, and then use my chop saw and cut 4 pieces and measure it off to the length and blah blah blah. On the back side, I cover up all the mistakes by gluing plain old paper on it, and then I use a hooker here. I did 2 of them. One of them, and the photo there is me and my wife. My sister had her 50th wedding anniversary party in the first week of October. I got an 8x10 of myself and my 3 siblings. My mom is 94. She lives in an old folks home, and she's about 99% dementia. So I thought it would be kind of nice to put a real nice frame with that same color mat and a photograph of her 4 adult children. And I took it down there, and that was her Christmas present. I hung it on the wall. And so I made 2 of them, almost identical, with a dry brush and a sealer coat put on it. And the other one is about this wide by about that. So this one here, my wife doesn't know where she wants to hang it in the house, but so she set out an easel thing, and it was just sitting on the counter there in the living room. So I was really pretty busy for Christmas. I did 6 things. Holy mackerel! And somewhere between the mid and or about the next week or so, I'm probably going to start on at least a half dozen more things. So.
Take it your eyes are doing much better.
Actually, no, they're not. This one is I'm still more blind in my left eye than my right one. I just got to go a lot slower and do this and be really, really careful because I don't want to look like that. So, but thanks for asking. Okay, that's all I got. Gendy. Have you heard of Butler?
I got a couple of show tells. That one I didn't bring in, but this is a wine rack that I made. I bent all these individually and then mounted them to a full-size board. And because of the weight of the wine, my wife wanted something to hang underneath the cabinets. So what I did is I made some French cleats underneath. These slide in and lock into the French cleats, and I just use 4 screws to keep it from coming back off the French cleat. But I just steam bent all of these individually, and then you can kind of see where they're glued in. I'll pass that around. And then this is a towel rack towel that I made. Go to one of the other pictures without the towels in it. this is kind of the same concept. There's actually 3 of the same here, and the 2 center ones are the same, the way they were bent. And I steam bent these, and then they're screwed and capped in the centers and on the ends, and I use it to hold towels outside the shower. And that's mounted on the wall with French cleat.
Is that one great big long strip that?
Yeah, this is one continuous strip, and then this is one continuous strip. So there's 5 strips of wood there. I'd be willing to do a presentation. I took pictures of all this when I did this, and I could bring in the stuff.
So you gotta make a form.
Yeah, so what I did is I took 2x12,
Okay.
and I cut the 2x12, and in the curve that I wanted. And I learned after doing this one here, the one that has multiple bends. See, this one, the 2 middle ones only have 2 bends, and the outside ones have much more. That I could get this first bend in, and then the other ones kind of hang up. So I ended up doing it in 3 parts. So I took my form and cut it to 3 pieces, because when I steam bent it, I could get if I was trying to do it all at once, the way that the wood was in there was kind of pinching. But if I did one of them and then did the ends last, I had no problem.
How long do you leave the wood in for?
I left it overnight, 24 hours. So I have a steamer that I made out of a piece of, I've got 2 3-foot long Schedule 40 pipes.
Okay.
And then I have a T that I put in the center, and I also have a T in order to feed if I need really long, if I want 7 or 8 feet long, I could steam 7 or 8 feet long. And then I just use a single collar to put the 2 pieces of 3-inch or 3-foot pipe together. And on the ends I have caps, and I just I've got one of those steamers from Woodcraft. It holds about 1.5 gallons of water, and it'll run for about 1.5 hours, which is more than I need for this, as thin as it is.
What is your target temperature for the water?
Whatever comes out. Steam. I mean, I don't worry about the temperature.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not measuring that because I'm using the actual device that's just creating the steam.
Okay.
If you were using like an open flame,
Yeah.
and a container, which is what a lot of the Windsor guys do, and they'll connect a radiator hose to the thing and run it that way. You got to be worried about that just because of the heat. But I also have a couple of holes drilled in my steamer for relief, just so that I don't have an explosion. You know, but nothing's glued.
Yeah.
So I have the pieces of pipe, and they're just fit together, so they stay together from friction.
Okay.
But if there got to be too much pressure inside of it, it would just come apart, which it's not a big deal.
How do you attach the ends, like on each of the ends on that one and the end on this one where it's perpendicular going into the board?
Those are just glued in, and then I wrapped. So that was a piece of 1x that I'd gotten. All that wood was air dried. I'd gotten from Ralph because I tried bending some stuff that had been kiln dried, and I thought, it's only 1/4 inch. Maybe I can make it work. But those are probably 70 or 80 inches long. They're pretty long. But what I did is on the ends, I just put in tack some nails because this is banded, and then here I drilled 2 holes, put screws in, and then put caps on it.
Okay. So you have mortises on the far ends, on like this one?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So just like if you look at when that's coming around,
Okay.
I actually just cut grooves and I slid those in, and then after everything was even, like I leveled them up to make sure, because when you bend them, what I did is I took a 2x4 and I cut my radius, and I probably had 9 or 10 of them. So I was doing multiple at a time because those were probably, 15 inches long. And so I made them longer than I needed. I bent them, and then after I bent them, then I cut them to length so that I had all the same size, so that way, when I put it into the form, it was level.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it's hanging on a cabinet, and it's right at eye level, so it'd be real easy to see if you had any type of deviation in the, so.
So this attachment thing, you think French something?
So those are French cleats. So a French cleat was what you use on the wall to hold your cabinets on. So I did the same thing with that. So what you have is two 45-degree angles, because a bottle of wine is, I don't know, a couple pounds. You got 6 bottles there. I didn't want to rely on screws, so those French cleats go all the way across, and I have 2 French cleats mounted to the bottom of my cabinets with 6 screws each. And then, so those are glued and screwed in there.
So, originally, when we were talking, I was thinking that it went under the shelf like this, but instead it hangs like
No, that goes underneath the cabinet. So I put it underneath the cabinet, and then I just slide it
Okay.
a half an
And
inch.
that's what the holes are for, is to hold it.
So those keep it from sliding back. So the weight of the wine is being held by the French cleats, which was kind of the pain in the asses, because I wanted to make you got to make sure that your 2 French cleats lock into place. So they had to be the right width on both of them, so that you don't have. So you got a full engagement of the French cleat, and then the screws just keep it from sliding.
So do you have 6 bottles of wine sitting at home on your counter right
They start with 6. Oh, no. Matter of fact, my wife sent me a text. It was empty, so I said, "Oh, since it's empty, I'll take it and do a show and tell." And she texted me on the way here and said, "Why don't you pick some wine up on the way home so you can fill it back up?" Yeah.
Benny's doesn't close till 9.
I know, that's where I'm going.
So that was literally the learning curve when you were
There you go.
trying to figure out how to dim that.
No, actually, I made that first. And then after I made that, my wife's like, "Can you do something to get the bottles off of the counter?" I'm like, "Sure." I couldn't do something easy.
Mike,
Yes, sir.
how about your shop out there that you're working on? Did you get it finished? Or is
He
that-
asks me every time.
Never
It's,
finished.
it's never finished. I'm back to work. They hired me back to
The
do.
original story was it was gonna happen
After
right
I
after we
retired.
finised the cabinets in the house.
Yeah. I retired in December, and they hired me back for a year contract, so I'm back to work. So.
That's not retirement.
No.
The proper answer is a shop is never finished.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Well, that's true, because I drove
It's a
home.
work in progress
I drove
at
home
any
from
point in time.
Colorado the second week of December, and I stopped at Grizzly Tools and picked myself up a new floor drill press. So I have an old Craftsman drill press. If somebody's looking for one, I got it for $75 at a farm auction. I've been using it forever, and if you can use it, you can have it, but you got to pick it up. It's a floor model.
There's one for the
Yeah.
shop.
And the wheel works to engage to drill, but it doesn't come back. The spring is not working. I fixed it once, and for some reason it's not working again. But it's yeah. Yeah. So, anyhow, any other questions?
It was
Thanks.
good. Any more show and tells? I got a quick one here. I actually built furniture part-time just to keep out of trouble. And I have this hair salon my wife and I go to, and they asked me to build them a desk. I built them a desk last year, and they liked it. And they had me build a desk for the owner's husband, and he was happy with it. They like to give me challenging projects because they gave me another thing to do back in October. They said we have our workstation, all the chairs where all the ladies are cutting hair and processing hair and all that stuff. And they have these shelves that are right in the middle of the way, and they're retaining, and they're like 4 feet long, 2 feet wide, and about 7 feet tall. And they get more in the way. And they asked, can you design something that'll be more work function related, a little bit smaller footprint? And I thought about it, and I said, I think I can. So I came up with this idea of why not make this circular, if you will. and put them on Lazy Susans. And so I put together a plan, I actually drew up the plan right here. And I gave it to the staff there, and I'll pass this around. And, here we go. And the customer can only glean so much from a drawing. And the question came up is, how's the footprint going to be? And can we put more or less supplies, you know, the spray cans, the bottles on each shelf? I go, that's a good idea. So I actually went back to my workshop and found a scrap piece of MDF, half-inch, and I have a shape of origin, and I actually, on the shape of origin, which has a new design program called Studio, I actually made up a mock-up piece of the shelf. And here it is right here. It only took like an hour to build and cut out. And so I actually took it to the shop, and it kind of gave them a better visual of what to expect with the shelves, with how it's gonna look, because it's gonna sit. They're gonna have 5 shelves a foot apart, and then just below it, there's gonna be a plate, there's gonna be a long pole coming through it, and then we're gonna have these mounted on Lazy Susans, and then they can spin them around. But the ladies there actually took out all the stuff from one shelf, and as it turns out, this round shelf, which you wouldn't figure, could hold the same as 1.5 of their shelves, so it's more efficient for them to use. So I'll pass this around. But to me, I guess if you're gonna build something kind of complex, it makes sense to do a mock-up first of it, then we can understand how it's gonna work, and also, it taught me how I have to approach it, how I'm gonna cut the wood out, because it took about an hour and a half to cut out the spaces in there with that.
Do you use a router?
I use
Freehand
the shape
router?
of origin with it.
What is this material?
This is MDF.
Oh,
Yeah.
do you like using that?
I only use it for mock-ups or jigs, things
Yeah.
like that, but I do like working with it, yeah.
Okay.
Wear a mask.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is this copyrighted or?
That was good.
Can see anything else?
I found my notes that I should have had earlier.
This one is a lot brighter than the other one.
So just a couple more quick things before we adjourn for the evening. I got an email from somebody who is looking to commission a porch swing. If anybody's interested in that, it's a local doctor here who got my email from somewhere, didn't even come through the website.
What's the project?
A porch swing. So I don't have any more details than that, but if somebody's interested in that, I'll pass you his information, and you can contact him and figure all that out. So, and then also renewal for almost all of our members. Renewal is due this month. I know some people already did tonight. The form that is in that email, not a big deal if you have that, if you're paying here, because we can just update everything right here. That form's more for if you're mailing it. But all the details are there. You can either mail that, do it here, or you can pay online with a credit card if you want. Also in that email, I talked about different jobs. So stuff like photographer, taking pictures of what's going on that will go in the newsletter, coordinating our holiday party, and a historian that's going to hang on to all this stuff. And there was one other one, the events coordinator, photographer, historian, and then somebody that just keeps track of charitable work, because that's one thing we do need to keep track of, so we can send out a report every year saying, hey, yeah, we are doing what we told the IRS we're going to do. You know, we had somebody at our last meeting who did something charitable for another organization, and it's just keeping track of that stuff. So if you're interested in doing any of that, it's very minimal time, but like I said in that email, if one person does all of it, it takes a while. Yes.
When you get a person to be a historian, you ought to send an email out asking old members that aren't here tonight for data from historic And I know I've sent you some.
Yeah, I've got some from you. Bob Fox gave me some stuff. But yeah, if you have stuff, Steve's got all kinds of stuff back there. So whoever is that, you know, kind of that collector of old records, we'll do that and try to get everything in one place.
There's a ton of old records on the old site.
Yes.
On, that Google Drive or.
Yeah, I downloaded all that out of GoDaddy before they killed that account, so I've got all that as well.
But there's also there's an email account that had a lot of that too.
Oh, I don't have access to that.
There was the club email that kind of got passed on.
Yeah, I never got that. So if anybody knows how to get a hold of that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you got access to that one.
Yeah, I got.
Okay, so yeah, then we do have that as well.
And secretary, I got a bunch.
No, but there was a drive. I think it was a drive associated with that, or maybe that was just on the site.
Yeah, we'll take a look and.
Yeah.
Dustin, Chips.
Yeah, that's on my list here. The swing, the renewal. So yeah, if you haven't renewed and you want to go ahead and do that tonight, Bob Booth in the back can take care of that. Is there anything else? Anything anybody has?
Did you print out the stuff for us to sign by chance?
I didn't have it.
The topic of epoxy has come up a couple times recently. Does anybody get these Epoxy Works magazines? They're always fixing something, mostly boats, but a lot of stuff. And they use the West system. You guys are familiar with? Is it West or West? Yeah, West system.
Yeah.
Probably heard of that before. I get them every now and then. Looks like quarterly, spring, summer, fall type stuff. Pass these around or leave them up there. You guys can take them. I don't care. But as far as epoxy goes, it's a nice resource. That's that.
Anybody else? Okay.
Is there any place in town where you get blade sharpened?
There used to be a guy off of Old Jack, but he moved to Salisbury.
So the one in Chatham still do it?
CF Sharp.
Chatham guy's closed.
He closed.
Did he?
CF Sharp.
Anybody? Oh, go ahead.
This is not local, but have you ever heard of W.D. Quinn down in St. Louis? For blades, they're awesome. They do residential, industrial. If you go there and meet them, they'll take you in, show you in their shop, show you how everything works. It comes out super. They ship it right back to you, like $5 shipping. They do awesome work.
Will you say that again? I didn't hear the beginning of
It's
that.
W.D. Quinn down in St. Louis.
W.D. Quinn in St. Louis.
W.D. Quinn. It's an awesome place.
There's a guy on Cockrell Lane behind me, not too far from Panther Creek. I've forgotten his name now.
Yeah, I'll get it, I'll print it. I just didn't know.
He did my lawnmower blades, and he does all sorts of other stuff too.
Well, there used to be a gentleman on
You could make one of
Route
these.
4, when you turn off,
I could probably make it something.
55,
like that.
you're heading
Like that
back
real
to
barrel they had
Interstate
in here last
64.
year.
So it was Route
The one from
4.
China,
And I know it was in
That's
business
what
up to
you
4
get
years
challenged.
ago,
Yeah.
but I haven't driven
W.D.
it
Quinn.
since, for 4 years. But he had a big sign on it, all saws sharpened. I had just done that in that Route 4 between I-25 and I-64. You couldn't miss it. Close to Lebanon, yes. Have you? Yeah, it's north of Lebanon and south of I-55. It's about 15 minutes, 20 minutes south of I-55 on Route 4.
Between 70 and 64, around 4. I think I know what
Yes,
you're talking about.
yes. So is he still in business?
I don't know. I'm trying. I
Yeah.
was just that way not too long
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if I seen the sign.
You're gonna have to look it up yourself, but there's a
Right.
guy in Chatham also.
Oh, great.
Well, he
Very close.
I didn't miss that.
The Sharp Shop.
There's also a sharpening business that used to be a block from me out on Old Jacksonville Road. I think it was C&W or something like that.
Yeah, I remember.
They've moved out to Salisbury.
One other point, we still have some old brochures for our club. Most of the information here is still accurate, except for our meeting times, that needs to be changed. But if anybody would like to take, we have quite a few of these, and we're gonna probably be updating them soon. So if anybody would like to take any of these, maybe take them to a local business, hand them to a friend, offer some other members, potential members, you know, so.
I'll take those.
I just Googled, saw blade sharpening near me, 3 of them popped up. Tom's Sharpening Service on Cockrell Lane, Knife Edge Sharpening in Chatham, and C&F Sharpening in Salisbury. So those apparently are all current.
What's the one at Chatham?
Knife Edge Sharpening. Excellent blade sharpening service, it says. I don't know what all they all do, but.
I was thinking saw blades.
The other one in Chatham went out of business.
Yeah.
Right, so, yeah, don't forget about the Mark Adams up here, if you haven't got one already. And I think that's it. Just make sure, please leave a tip for the waitress before you go. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.